Okay, and so that brings us to two methods or two approaches to using Shopp. And if you've watched any videos on how to use Shopp, you'll be surprised that there are two approaches. The first approach to using Shopp is the Shopp Centric Approach. That's what I'm calling it, the Shopp Centric Approach. And essentially what that means is that you use all of Shopp's features. You use Shopp for its product catalog, for its site organization, for its transaction processing. You use it for everything. The second approach is the WordPress-centric approach. And then in the WordPress-centric approach, you use WordPress for catalog and organization, and you simply use Shopp for transaction processing. Now, the benefits of using the Shopp-centric approach is that, first off, it's easy. Most of the work is automated for you. So I'm going to show you what that looks like as we work our way through this, even though we're actually not going to be using the Shopp-centric approach to build the site. But nevertheless, the Shopp-centric approach is easy because it has lots of simple automation already done for you. It has its own set of widgets, which are actually quite nice. And if you are using the Shopp-centric approach, then you can use the Shopp widgets. It also has very simple product navigation, which you can take advantage of. And then finally, it has a single point for data entry, which means you only enter the product price in one place. You don't have to ever enter it another place. And that is a very useful tool when managing data like this. And those seem like there are such good benefits that why would you consider not doing that? Well, the Shopp-centric approach also has some disadvantages. The first is that it has proprietary data handling. That means that Shopp stores its products, its product information, and all that sort of stuff in database tables that it creates itself. And if you decide that you want to use a different plugin at some point, you'll have to find a way to export Shopp's data into a format that you can import into your other plugins data, or you will have to just rebuild the other products from scratch in the other plugin. And if Shopp's such a good thing, why does it matter? Well, it just may happen that there may be a reason why it's important for you to change, and having a proprietary system for handling your data, I think, is not ideal. Secondly, Shopp's SEO is automatic. And what that means is that when I say it's automatic, that sounds like it's a good thing, but what it really means to a thesis veteran is that you have no control over it. And so it has very limited semantic URLs, and we'll talk about that next week, what a semantic URL is. But except for a moment that semantic URLs are important, it has very limited semantic URL, and you have no control over the meta title. The meta title is automatic, and it is the product name, even though you might not think that the product name is the perfect meta title. And there is no meta description. It does not generate a meta description. And so you leave Google to generate its own meta description, which is something that, if you're familiar with Thesis, you don't like to do. You want to be able to use the tools that Thesis provides to control and master the SEO. The next thing is sort of a small thing, although it gets to be a bigger thing when you have a large site, and that is you have no control over the product display order. Products get displayed in whatever order they're created in. I mean, you can sort them by, certain things in different views on the site, but nevertheless, it's still the last one shows up first and the first one is last. And even though you may think that there's a rational way, or there are things that are a priority that should be placed higher in the sort order, you don't have any control over that with Shopp. And you also don't have any control over that with WPE Store, which is the other software that I teach. And I've watched members come up with all kinds of, creative oddball things to do to try and fix that. But really it just comes down to you don't have any control over the product display order. And then finally, it's quite difficult to integrate social networking. So if you want to put a like button on a product, or you want to put a Facebook comment on a product, or you want to have a tweet this offer or tweet this deal or whatever, because it's proprietary data, there isn't any simple way of integrating social networking. Now, you certainly can, because you have access to all the programming, so you could write functions that add it, but you don't have access to sort of a simple method of integrating social networking into your store. Okay, so the next part of this then is the benefits of the WordPress-centric approach. Okay, in the first place, of course, it's not proprietary. That means that the data that we use when we use the WordPress system will work with any plugin, anytime. It's always going to be as good as WordPress is. So it's easy to switch plugins if you need to. You also have more control over SEO, and that's especially the case if you're using Thesis, because you'll have complete control over the SEO of whatever categories you create. You'll have control over the SEO of each product. You'll have all the control you are accustomed to with the other elements of Thesis. And so really, almost as far as I'm concerned, that's the primary reason for doing it, is that you have more control over the SEO. It also turns out, though, you also have more ways to organize, right? You could create a whole series of custom taxonomies and apply those to the products and use that as a means of indexing your products that you can't do if you're using the Shopp system. Shopp gives you categories and tags, and that's it. And in fact, that's more than enough probably in some cases, but there may be cases where an additional custom taxonomy would be useful to you. And so if you use the WordPress system, you have that. Also, in the WordPress system, you'll have control over the display order of your products. So you can choose to place your best-selling products at the top, or the most important products at the top. If products sort of go in a series, you can place them in a series. It's a relatively simple thing to organize your product display order when you are using a WordPress-centric approach. And of course, it easily integrates social networking. The same way you can add, Google Plus and Twitter and Facebook and any of the other things to any other part of your site in WordPress, you can add them to your products. And anymore now, that is also a very important element of having an online store, is being able to easily integrate social networking. So now the disadvantage of using the WordPress approach is it's more work, right? Because you don't get to take advantage of all the automation that automatically comes with Shopp. You can't use most of the Shopp widgets. Some of the Shopp widgets you'll be able to use, but most of them you won't be able to use because they're dependent upon you using the full Shopp system in order to work. And since you can't use most of the Shopp widgets, you'll need some additional plugins to replace those Shopp widgets, because you still want that kind of sorting and indexing functionality. And so we'll show you what you use, but there will be additional plugins. And we'll also have to create some additional product navigation, because it will be impossible to hide the normal Shopp product display. And so in the event that somebody inadvertently gets to one of the products as Shopp would display it, we need to give them a way of directing away from that product to the WordPress version of the product. And so there's a little bit of complexity that way. And then also you end up with multiple data entry locations. That is, in order for Shopp to handle the transactions, you're going to have to put the product price in Shopp, but you're probably also going to want to put the product price in the product post as well. And so at a minimum, you've got that one little bit of data that may not comfortably, that you may have to enter twice. And so those are the disadvantages. It essentially means that it's more work. However, it's my estimation that, especially in the situation that we're in right here, it's better to do the more work. So we're going to do the more work, and we're going to use the WordPress approach. I will show you what the Shopp approach looks like as well, so that you can see how it works, and I'll show you how it works. But one of the reasons why this is a 6-week course and not a 4-week course is because we're going to do the extra work to use the WordPress system. Now, I want to say one thing about the upcoming release of Shopp. Shopp, in July, they announced a beta version of 2.1. I'm getting those numbers mixed up now. Let's just go look at it real quickly. Shopp. Okay, 1.2. So we're installing 1.9, I guess, is what we're installing 1.19. And 1.2 is coming. They announced this here in July. It's currently in its 7th beta version, and there's a fair bit of work left to do on it before they're really ready to release it. The next version of Shopp does use default WordPress data structures. So it does create a custom post type. It does create custom taxonomies out of those products and out of product categories and product tags. And so it is possible for you to use the Shopp system and then transition later if you want. I had originally thought about teaching this with 1.2 beta, but it seems to me like 1.2 beta has quite a ways to go yet before it's going to be ready for real production use, and we need this to be in production in 6 weeks. So I will have a follow-up seminar on Shopp 1.2 once it's released and once everybody's comfortable that it's stable. But we'll be focusing on and using Shopp 1.19.